Welcome to Epic Begins with One Step Forward, the podcast that reveals how to plan, achieve, and enjoy the journey of creating epic results in your life, business, health, and relationships. Here's your host, best-selling author and motivational speaker, Xander Sprague.
Hello, epic people, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward. I'm your host, Xander Sprague, and today I am so honored to be joined by Juanita Wheeler. Juanita, tell us who you are, where you are, and what you do.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Xander. I am in Brisbane, Australia. I am a speechwriter, a public speaking coach and consultant, and I run my own business, as well as running TEDx Brisbane here in Australia.
Oh, how exciting. Boy, do I want to talk to you about public speaking and TEDx and all of that, because, well, I love public speaking. It's what I do too. So it's a good day when I get to speak. That's what I got to say. So how did you get into doing public speaking?
Well, actually, I'm a screaming introvert. And so public speaking did not come naturally to me at all. But what I came to realize quite begrudgingly is that if you have an idea that you're really passionate about, or if you want to fast track your career, or if in any aspect of your life you want to persuade people and get them to say yes to something, whether that's in your business or personal life, then being able to speak persuasively in a compelling manner is going to fast track that and make your life better. So I needed to discover a way to make that happen for me. So being a screaming geek and a nerd, I did a deep dive into all of the research, the neuroscience, the neuroeconomics, the behavioral psychology, to find a way to teach myself how to become a compelling and persuasive public speaker. And then from that, people started asking me to help them. And then it's become, my mission. It's the purpose why I get up in the morning, is to help people around the world to champion their ideas in a way that does them justice and gets their target audience to say yes.
Definitely. So what are some of the subjects that you talk about?
What we talk about, the first thing to know about public speaking is that every human is different. We do not come up a mass production line. So some people are incredibly comfortable on the stage and they just need help making sure that rather than focusing on just being charismatic and having people smile and laugh and say, I love that, but not actually achieve their strategic outcome of, did they buy from me? Did they buy my book? Did they sign on to my email list? Did they give me a promotion? So they need to focus on being strategic. And then you have other people, a large number of people who have brilliant ideas, but they're not getting outside of their shower or their cubicle because they're very much afraid of what will happen if they public speak. Will they make a mistake? Will they forget the words? Will they potentially undo all of the credibility in their profession they've just spent 10 or 20 years building? So for those people, we do a lot of work on understanding, what is holding you back? Because all of those haters in the back of your head that are telling you won't be good at it, or you can't do it, or you're an imposter or a fraud, they don't get a vote. So we're not going to listen to them anymore. We're going to dial up all the positive thoughts. And
Absolutely.
So what we work on depends very much on the individual. There is no one size fits all in public speaking coaching. It just doesn't exist if you're doing it properly. So everything I talk about is evidence-based. It's based on research. It's based on over 20 years of experience. I've coached over 100 TEDx speakers now. So it's about how to get your great idea or your product or your service or yourself, whatever you're trying to champion, across to your audience in a way that gets them to say yes.
Absolutely. And I can say that as a professional speaker for over 20 years myself, I do love it. I mean, being on stage is my happy place. I love being able to share my ideas. I'm told I'm charismatic. I'm told I spent 17 years as a technical trainer, so I know I can teach people things. So, I got all of that. The one thing I can say about being a public speaker, and my question for you is, when you're sitting in the audience and someone is speaking, but perhaps they're not doing the best they could, does it drive you up the wall? Because I know I'll be watching, and if they're doing stuff like they're pacing around like a caged animal because they're nervous and they don't know what to do, or gesticulating with their hands wildly, and it's so bad, and I try not to do it, but then I just start to pay attention to what is not, I don't want to say what's not going right, but what's wow, that's distracting. I can't stand that.
100% yes. And I'm sure that's the same with every professional in their field, regardless of what it is. Yes, but mostly my heart aches for the person. If it's a really good idea, to be ludicrously frank, if they're just flapping their gums and they're not really talking about something that has real quality and substance, then I think the world needs to know, then I just let it go. But if if I'm listening to somebody and I'm like, oh my goodness, they have such a great idea or such a great piece of research or a product or service or a message, and the world needs to know about it and they're not doing it justice, it breaks my soul a little bit, because I think, oh my goodness. And you named some of the things that, are really distracting to an audience that will stop them from being able to get that message. The pacing, the speaking too fast, the speaking too slow. One of my most frustrating things that I see is when people get up and you can see they've been trained, but they've been trained to present as though it's some kind of Shakespearean dramatic monologue. So they are speaking at the audience as though it's a play.
Yeah.
And, the big gestures and the vocal modulation and all of those things, which would absolutely be perfect if you were an actor on a stage delivering a monologue. But, this is 2025. And people, we're in a post-social media age where people see behind the scenes into people's lives all the time. So people they respect, they know what they're doing professionally, they know what they're doing on their weekends. There is an expectation that you will have an authentic relationship and a conversation with people if you want them to trust you and believe you and understand your expertise. So you see this very much a false facade, the dramatic monologue, and it hurts me because I know that if they just got up and spoke as though they were having a conversation with the audience in an authentic human way, that would be so much more compelling. And so that makes me crazy. The other one is when, you would know as somebody who's a professional speaker, you should have one solid strategic objective in your talk. You should get up and speak, and you should, without a doubt, have one thing. When I go and speak on this stage, at the end of speaking, I want the audience to do this one behavioral change, whether that's sign up to an email list, buy a product, go home and take a specific action, check their skin for moles, whatever it is. It doesn't really matter, but there's one thing you want them to say yes to and then do. And I find it very frustrating. I've been in some talks where somebody either gives me 26 ideas and I don't know and I don't know which is the idea, or alternatively, they will give a presentation and it's heartfelt and I'm like, I believe in everything you've just said. You've 100% convinced me. And then they leave me hanging. They do not tell me what I'm supposed to do with this information and knowledge and belief I now have. You've convinced me and there's no what's next directive. And I'm like, oh my goodness, you just needed 2 sentences at the end of that to tell me what to do. You just spent 25 minutes, 5 minutes, an hour convincing me that you are right, and then didn't tell me what to do with that next.
Right.
So yes, sitting in those audiences, my heart and soul breaks a little bit when I think, oh my gosh, that could have been a great talk. And instead it was just a good talk.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I want to shift a little because I know there are many people, myself included, just dying to do a TEDx talk. And I've been applying to TEDx talks and, there's 10 slots and there's 150 people and sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. For the people out there who are like, I do have a great idea worth sharing. As an organizer of TEDx talks, for you, what are you looking for when people are putting in their submission for their talk? I guess it's got to do with the theme of the theme that you're doing for that talk, right?
Well, there are a variety of different factors. So I actually have a blog post on this on LinkedIn. So it's linked in my link tree. So I'll make sure you have that link at the end so you can share it, because I think that
Definitely.
information would be really helpful. But the first thing you need to know is that TEDx events are independently run or boots on the ground versions of TED. So there is a split between TEDx events that allow you to apply for their event and those where you can't apply, you'll get a tap on the shoulder.
Yeah,
And we're a tap on the shoulder event, but
I got it.
you're looking for the same kind of thing. The best way, by the way, to find your local TEDx events, if you don't know, is please don't pay anybody for that list. And, it happens. There is a free list that TED itself puts out. So if you Google TEDx event listing, it'll take you straight to the TED page where they are providing all of that information for free.
Can I tell you my experience in that? Because I'm like, ooh, let me go see what's local. And I saw, and I was I have to say, I was surprised, I guess, as a professional speaker and stuff. So I see a list of here are events, TEDx talks that are organized. And oftentimes, at least going from the TED talk page and the TEDx, it would just say, we learn. No contact, no nothing, no way to find the talk, no way to, and I got creative. I'm going to LinkedIn. I'm trying to see if I can find people to say, by the way, are you accepted? But there's nothing. I'm like, I was sort of surprised. I'm like, if you're putting a TEDx event on, shouldn't you have some way for people to find your event? I'm like, I couldn't even get a ticket. I'm like, that's fascinating. I'd love to see that.
So typically what you'll do is you'll look at the event name and then Google it. So for privacy reasons, they can't stick, the individuals' names all over there. But you can, for example, if you went to the TEDx Brisbane listing, or if you looked up Brisbane or any place, and I send, a lot of my clients do this, they will find the events in their area, and then they will say, let's say it's Palm Springs, they will then Google TEDx Palm Springs, and they will have a website or different social media platforms, and they'll reach out to them that way. So TED can provide you the names of the events and the places, and sometimes the name of the event organizer if that person has made it public on that platform. There are sometimes for reasons they won't. I get around up to 25 LinkedIn requests every week saying, I'm a TEDx speaker, can I speak at your event?
Yeah.
So a lot of people choose to not have, any details there. But you can absolutely Google it, find out the event, and then follow them. People, my clients will typically subscribe to their newsletter if they've got one. They will follow them on socials, because the other thing to know is that TEDx events are volunteer run.
Yeah.
Nobody's getting paid. So they will typically come alive for a number of months a year, and then they'll go dormant and people will focus on their day jobs and their families and everything else. And then they'll spring back into it. But once you find the name of the events and when it's going to be on, join everything. Follow their socials, get on their email list, and then you'll be the first to know when something comes up.
Cool.
In terms
Good
of
advice.
Yes, thank you. In terms of then what they're looking for, every TEDx is different, but I can tell you, in our experience and in my experience of all the people I've worked with, what we're looking for is the idea, not the speaker, first and foremost.
Yep.
So you have to have a new and novel idea. One of the charters of TEDx in terms of its curatorial guidelines and content guidelines is that you're not putting out an idea that has appeared already in a TEDx talk.
Yep.
The goal is to build an expanding new library of different and new ideas. So one of the first things that we look for, so we're usually watching about 120 potential ideas and speakers at any given time. We have a long list.
Yeah.
And we'll typically watch people for 2 to 3 years, and we will read everything they've done. We will listen to every podcast they've been on. We will read every media interview. We are subscribed to all of our, surrounding universities, updates and newsletters to find out what's coming out of universities, what's coming out of community. We'll listen to community newsletters, all of these different places to find where is somebody with a new and novel idea. We have all the Google alert searches for World First Brisbane, latest research at Brisbane, all those kind of things, looking for new ideas. So when you're pulling together your idea, there are a couple of things you should think about. First of all, what are you so uniquely experienced in? And that might be academic qualifications. It might be years of research in a field, years of work experience. It could be your lived experience that is different, which means you have a unique perspective about something.
Definitely.
But what is your new and novel idea? And then you need to get it into 12 words or less. As Einstein said, if you can't explain your idea to an 8-year-old, then you don't really understand it.
Yeah.
And it's exactly the same thing. We will have people, if you can't get your idea into 12 words or less, you're either trying to cram 16 ideas into one, or you don't understand your idea well enough to be able to communicate it in its shortest, purest TEDx form.
Right.
First thing is to know it's about the idea, not about you. So you need to sell the idea first and know what it is. And the first thing I get, clients and potential speakers to do, and the first thing we do when we hear a really cool idea and think maybe that's something to put on our list is we will Google the main keywords of that idea and the words TED and TEDx.
Got it.
And if there are already 20 of them, they're not going on our list.
Got it.
So work out what about you is new and novel. And if it sounds like it might be similar to something that's been on another TEDx event, then make sure you very clearly in your 12 words or less clarify why your
differentiate yourself. Yeah.
Yes. Otherwise, you're not going to get past the first hurdle with most TEDx. The other thing is, even if you're prepared to travel, make sure if it's from a particular city or in a particular location, or there's a particular theme that year. TEDx's are not required to have themes. You can if you choose to. So some do and some don't. But if there's a particular theme that year and you know what it is, make sure that you explain to yourself either why you're associated with that city and it would be appropriate for you to speak there, even if you live there for 1 year in your college years, whatever it is. And then make sure you let them know why you would be well linked to their theme if they have one, or their university. Just try to connect yourself to why it would be appropriate for you to be there, is another great thing. And then the third thing you have to do is we will often find really great ideas, and I know this is the same with other TEDx organizers I've spoken to. They will find a really great idea that might be pitched by somebody, or they might read because somebody's put a post about it, and they're like, this is a great idea, I need to find more about it. But investigating the idea, they'll realize that's not the most qualified person to speak on that topic.
Mm-hmm.
So know your idea, get it into 12 words or less. Make the case for why you are an appropriate choice for that particular TEDx event, and also make an argument for urgency. Because otherwise, I think we go through and go, we could do that talk in 3 years. There's no urgency. If it's incredibly poignant, if it's topical right now, if there is a time reason that makes it urgent, put it in your application, and then make sure you make the case about why you are the best person to speak on that topic. A lot of people who eventually come to work with me, they've been applying for a long time, but they've made really good cases about their idea. And then other people have been invited to present them. And when I read what they've written, I'm like, yeah, you forgot to explain why you were the expert to speak on. And so you sold the idea, but not yourself. And you need to do both.
Got it. Now, shifting a little off of TEDx, because I love to get a full view of my guests and stuff like that. One of the things I talk about in my book is not yet. This concept of there are the things that we want to do, but it's not yet. Maybe it's write a book. Maybe it's run a marathon. Maybe it's start a podcast. I don't know. So I'd love to ask my guests, what are one or two of your not yets?
Well, first of all, I have exactly the same thing with people who come to me and they're like, I've always wanted to speak, but not yet. And my reply to them is always the same. Just start.
Mm-hmm.
Just start. But in terms of my not yets, I turned 50 this year. So I have a huge list of the year of things that I kept saying, oh, look, I'll do that by the time I'm 50 or when I'm 50. So I have a book manuscript I'm currently finishing writing. I am launching a podcast this year. I have finally started walking and running 5 times a week to, spend time on me. I've, spent 3 decades looking after 3 kids and juggling careers. I've got 3 master's degrees. That takes time getting that done.
It certainly does.
I have a PhD application I'm completing now to start my PhD on public speaking research. So, This is I live 500 meters away from a state forest park here, and there are 52 walking trails. I've lived here for, over a decade and never walked all of the walking trails, even though it's literally at the end of my street. So
Yet there's no excuse because it's literally at the end of your street.
at some point in time, it just becomes rude and disingenuous that you haven't done it. So these are all on my year of 50 list. Is I'm walking all 52 trails. I am going to walk, do walking or running 5 times a week and take care of me, prioritize me for a start. I'm going to sleep better. I have stopped drinking Coca-Cola as at Christmas Eve. I am going to get this podcast launched this year. I'm so impressed with everyone who's a podcast, and your show is great. So congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
The book manuscript will be completed and the PhD application will be submitted. And they are my things I am wiping off my not yet list.
I really wish, Juanita, that, you could make yourself busy, because clearly you're not busy enough walking 52 trails and PhD and exercising and writing a book and doing a podcast. Wow. That is an awesome list of not yet. And I love the concept of not yet, because it's so optimistic. It says, I'm working on it. And there's the stuff, as you know, I went and got my master's at 45. Then I'm now a licensed professional clinical counselor. I needed 3,000 hours of internship to then have earned the privilege to take the licensing exam to become licensed. So that's a long trip.
Master's degrees are no joke.
Yeah, they aren't. And PhD is even more. But that whole thing of not yet, like, are you licensed? Not yet. I'm working on it, but it takes time. And I find it funny in our adult lives and in this age of instant gratification, where if someone were a first year in university, you wouldn't ask them if they've earned their bachelor's yet, because we realize that there's a path that they have to take. And yet we get out in the real world. Oh, well, have you completed that? Have you finished your book? Well, not yet. If you say no, then it stops the whole conversation, makes it sound like it may never come out.
I 100% agree. I use it with my coaching clients, my one-on-one public speaking coaching clients all the time. When somebody says to them, or I say, in our initial Kickstart meetings, and I'm like, so are you, first of all, I make it very clear. When you leave your house in the morning, do you talk to anybody? Anybody at all once you've left the house? I'll say yes. I'm like, great. Okay, so you're already public speaking. Now we're just talking about different stages.
Yeah.
Is it the coffee shop, or is it, on a TEDx stage, or the floor of the United Nations General Assembly? These are all public speaking. It's just different stages. But when we get to the point we say, and I'll ask them, I say, so are you speaking on, prestigious, lights, camera, action stages? And they say no. And I'm like, no, not yet. Exactly the same thing. This is now a work in progress. Just start, and now you're on the journey. But that is very different to, I'm not going to start. Once you've taken that first step, tiny step, it doesn't matter, but take that first step, and then then your answer is not yet, but I'm doing it.
Absolutely. And that, of course, ties right into my epic begins with one step forward, which is any of the epic things I've got to do, writing my books, running a marathon, starting a podcast, having a broadcast TV show, all started because I said, I want to do it. I have no idea what the path looks like exactly, but I'll just take one step forward. I'll do some research. I'll do the same way that you're like, let me do some research. I like research. Let me do research about public speaking, And that's how that starts. And it's so often how that first step is not nearly as hard as we anticipated. Know what I mean?
Yes, I agree. And I think also, I'm a recovering perfectionist. So, that's another layer of complexity. But when I think, and I get perfectionism paralysis, which I'm absolutely working on, and I'm much better, but it looks like procrastination to others. But in my head, if it's not going to be perfect, I'm really reluctant to start. So I think that the first step, how intimidating it is, also depends on if you are making that first step so ginormous that it's intimidating, then, you got to look at what your first step is, because your first step doesn't have to be huge. You just got to dial it back and give yourself permission to make that first step, tiny or small or completely achievable. Because once you've done that first step, you would know yourself there's a sense of confidence and elation. And it's like, oh, this isn't going to be so hard.
Well, it wasn't that hard.
No,
Yeah.
but if you make your first step of, starting to do trail walking, climbing Mount Everest, that's a ridiculous first step. Of course, you're going to feel terrible. And, it's going to be like, no. But if you say, look, my first step is walking around the block, that is a completely, for most people, unless you're a klutz like I am, and that's, and my one block is like 3 kilometers. But, make it achievable, and baby steps count. Just start.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I think is important is failure is part of the journey. You are going to try stuff that doesn't work. You're going to work on your speech, and there are parts of it that you think you came up with it and you think it's so brilliant. And when you get out there, you're like, yeah, that's not working. I can't, that story just doesn't have the impact I thought it would, or whatever. I talk to my clients all the time about, we fail all the time. It's not that you want to fail, but you're going to. The only thing we'll fail 100% at are the things that we don't try. And you're right. Some of the big audacious goals that we have, we don't know. Look, when we get up in the morning, we don't have the answers to every question that we're going to be asked. And yet we still get up and walk out the door, don't we? I get up and I'm walking out the door, even though I don't have, the recovering perfectionist who says, if I don't have all the answers to every question, I can't possibly leave.
Absolutely. So it's just a matter of going, okay, cool. I need to recognize that that's, step 25 or 256.
Yeah.
I just need to start with step 1 and celebrate that. That's the other thing I've learned and I work on with my clients, is that we can be really bad. I'm terrible at, I will finish a task and I will say, what's next? And it won't matter how impressive other people might think it is. I'm just like, and I don't celebrate. And that's something that I've really worked on. And I've actually learned to work on it I was modeling it for my clients and teaching it for my clients, and then not doing it myself. Because, celebrate the wins. And there are so many different ways you can do it. My favorite is, 2 minutes 30, pick a favorite song that just lifts you up and dance in your lounge room like nobody's watching, or if you're an extrovert, like everyone's watching. And, everyone can find 2 minutes 30 in their day to celebrate. But before you say what's next and start the next task, celebrate that. And
Absolutely.
I think that really helps. And you talk about failing, and I talk about, with public speaking, I talk about road testing. And I think, as soon as, your speech is not ever written in stone, even once you make your signature keynote, it's not written in stone. You're going to go out and you're going to road test it. And I think the important thing is also when people come back, and sometimes they'll say, look, this just didn't land. And I'm like, great. Now we have to have the conversation and the strategy discussion. Did that not land full stop? Or did that not land with that particular audience when you're trying to get to this particular yes for this strategic objective? Because don't just chuck it in the bin. I mean, sometimes maybe it is just not great and you've been trying to tell them for 2 months. But sometimes it's like, look, actually, I think there's merit in that, but just not with this audience.
Absolutely.
So we just need to jig that. But, road test everything. And I used to think that if I got onto a stage or in any aspect of my life, if it wasn't 100% perfect, then I had failed. And so the thing I say to all of my speakers, my TEDx speakers, the keynote speakers I coach is, you got to stop that. Because, if you are a perfectionist, what your new goal is 80-20 rule. So 80% perfection, 20% authentic human moments. So that might be that you forget a line and I give them all the strategies for what to do when that happens. So it's endearing and actually gets the audience on your side rather than looking like a mistake, which my former judgy self would have called it. Or if when you first start out, you say, well, I'm going to need some notes, or I need to have notes, on a side table, some water just in case. These are all things that, in your 80% authentic human moments that you're allowed. And if you use them and utilize them and recover from them really successfully on stage with smart strategies, it can make the audience like you more because they're a part of this authentic human moment that is special and endearing, as opposed to if you've been trying to do the dramatic monologue, then errors, seem disproportionately worse because of the style and manner in which you've been trying to, lecture and present to the audience as opposed to have a conversation with them.
Right. Absolutely. And I, as a speaker, I just have an outline because I'm not going to memorize it. I'm very good at the kind of impromptu, and each speech I give, I've given the same speech, 100 times, but every time there's something unique about it because, again, it's got to do with the audience. It's got to do with me. Look, if the audience is really into it, maybe I'm improvising a little extra, or I think of something that's relevant to the audience. I can make a joke about the weather. I can, do something. And I was giving a speech at a graduation, and they wanted to have it up in the book so that when I went up to the lectern, it was there. And so I sent in my outline. They're like, no, you must have made a mistake. You just sent like an outline. I'm like, no, that's my speech. They're like, what? I was like, no, that's how I do it. I just have my key talking points. I practiced. I know what I want to say, but it will be unique. And, that for some people, they have to write it all out. But the problem for me is if I forgot it, now I get lost. Whereas if somehow I'm like, oh, wow, I forgot to say that point. All right, well, I'll just weave it back. I'll weave it in now, So find your style. Just because it works for one person doesn't mean it works for you.
Absolutely. And I think that comes down to, the way, I always say confidence is virtually 100% preparation. How much you prepare is how confident you are on the day. I've had TEDx speakers on the stage who, invariably I'm pulling somebody out of a bathroom cubicle who is so nervous. And the thing I found really interesting, over 10 years ago when I started doing this specifically with TEDx, was there was no correlation between the amount of times that person had spoken before and whether they were the nervous. I thought it would be the first-time speakers who were freaking out. But more often than not, it's the speakers who have spoken 100, 200, 1,000 times, but they'd gotten complacent about it and then freaked out because they hadn't put in the work. And the one unifying thing that I hear from them is like, I didn't do enough preparation. And I think, all talks are different. If speaking at a local Rotary or Elks meeting,
right,
that's completely different. When you're talking about, for example, a TEDx stage, I mean, all of our scripts are locked down months in advance. We work on them with the speaker. They have to have them memorized 6 weeks out and sound like a robot so they can spend the last 6 weeks rehearsing the performance of it. And they're not wondering and grappling for the next word because they've already got that. And that reflects the fact that, for our license, we have to fact check everything they're going to say. So we have to have triple references for, everything somebody says that asserts, where's the science of that? Are you saying most or are you saying many? Yeah. What's your validation for using this word over that?
Yeah.
And then we need to know that they have, our timesheets are down to the second. So it's like your talk is going for 5 minutes and 19 seconds. So you have to deliver it in 5 minutes and 19 seconds. But, that's a very, very limited, unique kind of experience. Whereas most people, if they get up and well rehearsed and they've done it for a while and they know that they've got 45 minutes to give a keynote, they know that there are ebbs and flows. They can have some slides, not with words or bullet points, ideally, small, if you've got more than 5 words on the slide, stop. You've made a slidegement, which is a document trying to masquerade as a slide rather than a slide. But, you'll see it and you'll know, okay, well, now I talk about this. You don't need to do that. And I understand I've had the same response when people say, send me it and we'll put it up on the lectern. Though my response is, I won't be speaking behind a lectern. I refuse to speak behind a lectern. And people go, why? I say, well, 2 reasons. First of all, I'm 4'10". I'm like, but secondly, because as soon as you introduce a lectern, you are putting a physical barrier
That is
between
true.
yourself and the audience. And that's fine if you are doing, the dramatic monologue. But if you're trying to have a conversation with your audience and you want them to authentically get on board, persuade them to say yes to something, don't stick the barrier between you. Step out from the lectern and just talk.
Absolutely. Juanita, this has been a truly epic conversation. I want to thank you so much for joining me. How can people get a hold of you? How can they find you if they want to connect with you?
That would be lovely. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's just Juanita Wheeler. There will be a person wearing red. But also, I will give you my website, which is fullandfrank.com. My company is called Full and Frank because I am. And also, I'll give you my Linktree link where there are a number of free guides available, including how to get started in public speaking and how to grow your business with public speaking.
Awesome. Well, I will have that Linktree link in the podcast description. And I want to thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's always lovely to speak with somebody who also is so experienced in public speaking.
Oh, thank you so much. I want to remind everyone that if you're ready to begin your epic journey, go to epicbegins.com. And as always, remember, epic choices lead to the epic life that you want.
Get your gift copy of the award-winning book, Epic Begins with One Step Forward, at epicbegins.com. That's a wrap on this episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward with your host, Xander Sprague, best-selling author, internationally acclaimed public speaker, and licensed professional clinical counselor. To make your next conference or event epic, send an email to Xander at zander@epicbegins.com. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Remember, epic choices, epic life.